Throughout ancient history, humanity has always flirted with the forbidden, the summoning of forces beyond comprehension. In this video, Rituals of Darkness, How Demons Were Summoned in Myth, we descend into the shadowed realms of ancient rites, cursed languages, and bloodbound pacts. From Babylonian incantations to medieval grimoires, we'll uncover how different civilizations believed they could open gateways to the infernal world. Were these rituals mere superstition, or did they tap into something truly dark and real? Join us as we unveil the terrifying secrets of demonic summoning and the myths that refuse to die. Darkness awaits, enter if you dare. Rituals of Darkness, How Demons Were Summoned in Myth. Throughout history, humanity has been fascinated and terrified by the unseen forces believed to dwell beyond the mortal realm. Among these forces, demons occupy a particularly dark corner of myth and religion. While angels and gods were invoked for protection, demons were summoned for power. From the deserts of Mesopotamia to the crypts of medieval Europe, tales abound of rituals cloaked in secrecy, rites said to call forth infernal beings who could grant knowledge, wealth, or vengeance at a terrible price. Rituals of Darkness is more than superstition, it represents humanity's oldest curiosity, the desire to control what lies beyond understanding. Across cultures, these summoning rites share haunting similarities, precise symbols, offerings of blood, circles of protection, and the invocation of sacred or forbidden names. Each ritual, whether performed by ancient magi or medieval sorcerers, reflects a deeper struggle between spiritual boundaries and human ambition. The ancient origins of demonic summoning. Long before Christianity gave the world the image of devils with horns and pitchforks, ancient civilizations already spoke of spirits both benevolent and malevolent. The earliest records of summoning rituals can be traced to Mesopotamia, where priests of Babylon and Assyria practiced complex ceremonies known as fmaklu, meaning burning. These were exorcism rituals designed to counter curses and drive out evil spirits, but their structure revealed an understanding of how such entities might also be invoked. Clay tablets inscribed with cuneiform described incantations that called upon the names of demons such as Lamashtu and Pazuzu, the latter known as both a bringer and banisher of plague. To call upon these entities, the priest would draw sacred diagrams on the ground, offer blood or incense, and chant names from a hidden language believed to command spiritual obedience. The same knowledge used to banish demons could, in theory, be reversed to summon them. In ancient Egypt, the line between divine and demonic was even more blurred. Egyptian sorcerers invoked beings called Aku, spirits of the dead, or Sefeket, dark forces bound to serve magicians who knew their names. The Book of the Dead itself contained spells meant to open portals to the Duat, the underworld. Egyptian ritual papyri describe offerings of food, wine, and oil to attract spirits, often performed under the protection of the god Thoth, master of magic and words of power. Thus, the earliest summoning rites were not acts of evil, but of communication. Humanity sought contact with spirits, whether to heal, curse, or learn forbidden wisdom. Over centuries, these spiritual practices evolved into rituals of darkness, rites seeking dominion over demons rather than dialogue with them. The Greek and Roman legacy, necromancy and the invocation of shades. When Greek civilization flourished, the concept of summoning spirits became formalized through necromancy, the calling of the dead. While not all necromantic rituals involved demons, they often crossed into demonic territory by invoking chthonic deities, gods of the underworld like Hecate, Persephone, and Hermes Psychopompos. The Greeks believed the underworld housed not only human souls but also dangerous entities, daemons, intermediate spirits between gods and men. Some of these daemons were benevolent, others were chaos-born, remnants of titans or spirits of vengeance known as Erinyes. In the Necromantian, the oracle of the dead at Ephra, ancient summoners performed eerie rites, fasting, purification with fire and sulfur, and the sacrifice of black sheep. They chanted invocations in the name of underworld gods, sometimes smearing themselves with blood to share the essence of death. The belief was that through this sympathetic link, the veil between worlds could be pierced. Roman writers like Lucan and Horace later described witches such as Erechthó, who summoned demons and corpses alike by feeding them blood drawn from the living. The Romans, inheriting and expanding Greek ideas, began to see summoning as an act of rebellion against divine order, an echo of demonic defiance itself. Through necromancy, the ritual of summoning evolved into a structured, often theatrical performance, a dark mirror of the religious ceremonies performed in temples. The magician became a high priest of the infernal realm. The Jewish and biblical view, forbidden invocations. In the ancient Hebrew worldview, summoning spirits was considered the gravest of sins. The Book of Deuteronomy, 18:10-12, condemns anyone who consults with familiar spirits, or a necromancer. Yet, the very need to forbid such practices proves their existence. One of the earliest biblical accounts of a summoning ritual is found in 1 Samuel 28, where King Saul visits the witch of Endor to call up the spirit of the prophet Samuel. The witch performs her rite, perhaps through incantation, a vessel, or a scrying medium, and the spirit appears, rebuking Saul for disturbing the dead. Though presented as divine punishment, this story reveals the ancient understanding that the dead could indeed be called forth. Later Jewish mysticism, particularly in the Book of Enoch and Kabbalistic traditions, expanded on the nature of demons. The Watchers, fallen angels who descended to earth, became the archetypes of demonic powers. They revealed forbidden arts to humanity, mythology, enchantment, and astrology. Invoking such beings was believed to require the repetition of their secret names, learned through hidden scriptures. By the Middle Ages, Jewish magical texts such as the Sefer HaRazim and Testament of Solomon provided detailed instructions for contacting both angels and demons. These writings introduced ritual seals, planetary correspondences, and the use of divine names, tools that would later shape the grimoires of Western demonology. The medieval era, the birth of the grimoire tradition. In medieval Europe, demon summoning reached its most elaborate and codified form. Between the 12th and 17th centuries, secret books known as grimoires circulated among scholars, monks, and occultists. These texts, such as the Lesser Key of Solomon, the Grand Grimoire, and Grimorium Verum, were manuals of ritual magic detailing how to call, bind, and command infernal spirits. The Lesser Key of Solomon, Lemigton, particularly its first section, the Ars Goetia, lists 72 demons, each with ranks, sigils, and powers. Summoners were instructed to draw the demon sigil within a protective circle, burn incense like myrrh or storax, and recite conjurations using divine names. The magician, purified by fasting and prayer, stood within a consecrated space marked by the Tetragrammaton, the four-letter name of God, believed to shield him from harm. The ritual followed strict steps. Preparation: the magician must cleanse his body and mind through abstinence, prayer, and confession. Construction of the circle: a double circle was drawn on the ground, inscribed with sacred names, planetary symbols, and pentagrams. Within it stood the summoner, armed with a wand or sword. Invocation: the magician recited specific incantations calling upon God's authority to compel the demon's appearance. Manifestation: the demon was believed to appear within a triangle of manifestation outside the circle, often accompanied by a noxious odor or blast of cold wind. Binding and command: the summoner ordered the demon to obey, demanding knowledge, treasure, or service, sealed by the display of its sigil. Failure to maintain focus or proper ritual purity could be fatal. Many legends told of magicians torn apart by the very demons they summoned, cautionary tales of arrogance before cosmic forces. The Church condemned these rites as heresy, yet paradoxically, many grimoires invoked Christian symbols and prayers. The conjurer often called upon the Trinity or Archangel Michael to enforce authority. This paradox highlights the strange duality of medieval summoning: it was both blasphemous and devout, an attempt to harness evil through divine power. The tools and symbols of summoning. Demonic rituals depended on a series of symbolic tools, each believed to bridge the physical and spiritual worlds. Among the most common were the magic circle, a sacred boundary separating the summoner from the demon. Its geometry represented perfection and divine authority. The triangle of manifestation, placed outside the circle, it confined the demon's form to a controlled space. Sigils and seals, unique symbols representing each demon's essence. Drawing them accurately was crucial to summoning success. Names of power, the invocation of divine or infernal names, believed to vibrate with metaphysical force, was essential to compel obedience. Offerings and incense, fragrant materials such as frankincense, myrrh, or blood symbolized sacrifice and attracted spirits. The wand, sword, and pentacle, instruments representing will, authority, and protection. In many traditions, sound itself, intoned chants or rhythmic drumming, acted as a gateway. The vibration of sacred words altered consciousness, enabling contact with other planes. Thus, the summoner did not merely call a demon, he aligned his spirit to its frequency. The psychological and symbolic interpretation. While ancient peoples believed these rituals literally summoned demons, modern scholars and occult philosophers often interpret them symbolically. The demons of grimoires may represent aspects of the human psyche, repressed desires, fears, and ambitions. The summoning ritual, then, becomes an allegory for confronting one's inner darkness. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, suggested that myths of demons externalize humanity's shadow, the hidden side of the personality that contains forbidden impulses. The act of summoning may symbolize bringing those impulses into awareness and binding them through willpower, represented by the magician's circle of protection. Similarly, esoteric traditions like Hermeticism and Thelema teach that true magical power lies not in commanding literal demons but in mastering the self. The tools and symbols of summoning, sigils, names, circles, become psychological instruments for focus and transformation. Yet the persistence of these rituals in myth and folklore shows their deep emotional resonance. Whether symbolic or real, the idea of calling something from darkness to serve human intent speaks to the timeless tension between control and chaos. Demonic summoning across cultures. The motif of calling dark spirits is far from exclusive to the West. Similar practices exist globally, adapted to local cosmologies. In African traditional religions, such as Vodun, practitioners communicate with powerful Loa or spirits through drumming, possession, and offerings. Some of these spirits, if disrespected, manifest as destructive forces akin to demons. In Japan, onmyoji, spirit magicians, were believed to summon shikigami, spiritual familiars capable of spying, cursing, or protecting. In India, tantric texts describe the invocation of bhutas and pisachas, restless spirits or demons, through mantras, often for protection or revenge. In Islamic mysticism, grimoires like the Shams al-Ma'arif detail rituals for summoning jinn, powerful beings of smokeless fire, governed by divine hierarchies similar to Western demons. Despite cultural differences, the structure remains constant, a ritual boundary, invocation of sacred words, offerings or sacrifices, and the presence of a being from beyond the human realm. This universal pattern suggests a deep, archetypal human urge to engage with the unseen. The price of power, cautionary tales. Every myth of demonic summoning carries a warning. In many legends, those who sought to command darkness became enslaved by it. Medieval chronicles tell of Faust, the scholar who made a pact with Mephistopheles, trading his soul for knowledge and pleasure. Similarly, folk tales recount magicians who summoned demons for gold, only to be dragged to hell when their contracts expired. These stories served moral and theological purposes, reminding audiences that some knowledge is forbidden for a reason. Even in non-religious contexts, the moral remains timeless. Power obtained through transgression leads to destruction. The demon, in essence, is the consequence of unrestrained desire. Modern echoes, the survival of the summoning myth. Though modern science has dispelled belief in literal demons for many, summoning rituals persist in occult subcultures, literature, and popular media. Movies, novels, and video games often dramatize the ancient motif, circles of power, forbidden texts, and the high cost of invoking darkness. Psychologically, the fascination endures because the idea of summoning demons speaks to universal fears and temptations, the lure of hidden power, the rebellion against divine order, and the thrill of confronting the unknown. Some contemporary occultists reinterpret the practice through chaos magic, where sigils and invocations serve as tools for personal transformation rather than supernatural contact. In this sense, the demon becomes an aspect of will or creativity, still dangerous, but inwardly directed. Since the dawn of civilization, humanity has feared, and yet been fascinated by, the unseen. In the shadows of ancient temples, deep within medieval crypts, and whispered through forbidden grimoires, men and women dared to call forth what should never have been summoned. Across every corner of the world, myths tell of rituals that open doors between worlds, ceremonies performed not for gods, but for demons. These were the rituals of darkness, the unholy keys that linked mortal and infernal realms. But how exactly did ancient people believe demons could be summoned? What were the tools, the symbols, and the forbidden words that turned ordinary men into conjurers of the abyss? Let's uncover the terrifying truths behind the myths, the origins, the rituals, and the consequences of summoning demons throughout human history. 1. The ancient roots of demon summoning. The concept of calling upon dark spirits predates Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. In fact, some of the earliest evidence of ritualistic demon invocation comes from Mesopotamia, over 4,000 years ago. The Babylonians and Assyrians believed in a world teeming with both good and evil spirits, entities that could bring disease, madness, or ruin upon humans. To communicate or control these beings, ancient priests known as Asapu performed exorcisms and summoning rites inscribed on clay tablets in cuneiform. Ironically, their purpose was not always evil. These rites were often meant to control demons or compel them to obey divine commands. The Marklu tablets, one of the oldest magical texts, describe fire rituals, offerings, and the recitation of incantations to bind, summon, or banish malevolent spirits. One passage reads, "By the command of the gods, I summon you forth, spirit of the underworld, obey my words or be consumed by fire." Even here, the seed of later demon-summoning myths was planted, the idea that with the right words and symbols, humans could cross into forbidden realms. 2. The Egyptian shadow and the power of names. In ancient Egypt, summoning was an act of knowledge, not defiance. Egyptians believed that knowing the true name of a spirit or god granted power over it. Magicians, or Heka priests, inscribed names on papyri or clay figures to invoke and control supernatural forces. Some texts, such as the Book of the Dead and Coffin texts, contain invocations that could easily be seen as summoning spells. One ritual involved drawing a circle of protection, lighting incense, and chanting the name of a fiery being of the Duat, the Egyptian underworld, to command its presence. However, summoning was never without danger. Demons in Egyptian belief, like Apep, the serpent of chaos, could destroy the summoner if improperly bound. Thus, magicians wore protective amulets inscribed with the Eye of Horus, believing it guarded them from spiritual backlash. 3. The Greek and Roman necromancers. The Greeks took summoning to the next level. Their rituals often involved necromancy, the act of communicating with or calling the spirits of the dead. But in their worldview, demons, daemons, were not always evil. They were spiritual intermediaries, some benevolent, others wrathful. In the Orphic and Hermetic traditions, summoning was seen as an act of cosmic manipulation. Through sacred geometry, lunar timing, and invocations to Hecate or Hermes, magicians attempted to compel spirits to appear. The Necromantion of Ephra, a real temple in Greece, was said to be a gate to the underworld. There, supplicants drank hallucinogenic brews, offered sacrifices, and chanted spells to call upon the shades of the dead, and sometimes, darker things that answered instead. When Rome absorbed Greek magic, the practice became known as Goetia, literally sorcery. Roman laws forbade such acts, labeling them as maleficium, witchcraft. Yet, records show that even emperors like Nero and Julian the Apostate sought necromancers and magicians to summon spirits for prophecy and power. 4. The Judeo-Christian transformation, from spirits to demons. With the rise of the Hebrew and later Christian worldview, the idea of spirit invocation took on a darker meaning. What had once been neutral daemons became demons, fallen angels who rebelled against God. Summoning them became synonymous with heresy. The Book of Enoch, an ancient Jewish text, describes how the fallen angels, the Watchers, taught humanity forbidden arts, including enchantments, astrology, and the summoning of spirits. Their leader, Azazel, was blamed for teaching humans the secrets of heaven. In the Testament of Solomon, the legendary king gains power over demons using a magical ring given by the archangel Michael. Solomon uses this ring to command demons to build his temple, learning their names, powers, and sigils. This text would later become the foundation of Solomonic magic, one of the most influential traditions in Western demonology. By the Middle Ages, summoning demons was seen as an act of pacts and damnation. To call upon one was to risk the soul itself. 5. Medieval rituals of darkness. During the Middle Ages, demon summoning evolved into an elaborate and structured practice. Manuals known as grimoires began to appear, books claiming to hold the exact formulas to summon and control infernal beings. Among the most famous were the Key of Solomon, the Leamington, and the Grand Grimoire. A typical summoning ritual might include the Circle of Protection, a boundary drawn in chalk or blood, inscribed with divine names to protect the summoner from harm. The Triangle of Manifestation, where the demon was to appear, often containing its sigil. Offerings and sacrifices, animal blood, incense, or items of symbolic power. Invocation of divine authority, the summoner would call upon God or angels to command the demon, not invite it. The binding and bargain, once the spirit appeared, the magician would force it to swear obedience or offer secret knowledge. For instance, to summon Baal, one of the 72 demons of Solomon, a magician would chant, "I conjure thee, Baal, by the living God, the true God, the holy God, who spoke and all things were made." The key was authority. Demons were believed to obey only those who invoked the name of God with purity and courage. Any mistake, a broken circle, a mispronounced name, could lead to possession, death, or damnation. 6. Renaissance and occult revival. As Europe entered the Renaissance, the forbidden arts returned in intellectual disguise. Scholars like Cornelius Agrippa, John Dee, and Paracelsus reinterpreted ancient summoning as spiritual science. They sought communication with angels and demons alike, seeing it as a means to gain divine wisdom. John Dee and his squire, Edward Kelly, famously performed the Enochian rituals, claiming to speak with angelic, and sometimes infernal, entities through crystal mirrors. Their angelic language was said to hold the power of creation itself, echoing the mythic languages of earlier grimoires. At the same time, witch trials spread across Europe, fueled by fear of demonic pacts. The Malleus Maleficarum, 1487, described witches who summoned demons for flight, transformation, and dark knowledge. Ironically, it was the Church's obsession with these rituals that helped preserve their details for history. 7. Eastern traditions of summoning. While Western demonology focused on infernal hierarchies, Eastern traditions had their own versions of summoning. In ancient Japan, the practice of onmyodo blended Shinto and Taoist cosmology. Summoners known as onmyoji used paper talismans and ritual circles to invoke or banish spirits called oni, demons or corrupted souls. The legendary onmyoji Abe no Seimi was said to command legions of spirits, binding them to his will through sacred geometry and divine calligraphy. Similarly, in India, tantric traditions described summoning bhutas and vetalas, restless spirits of the dead, using mantras, ashes, and diagrams called yantras. Even in Tibet, certain monks performed rituals to summon wrathful deities, not to worship, but to subjugate them, binding their power for protection. Across all cultures, summoning was not always evil. Sometimes it was an act of balance between light and dark. 8. The price of power. Every myth of summoning carries one universal truth: power has a price. In medieval folklore, a demon never appeared without demanding something in return. This became the foundation of the Faustian bargain, the pact with the devil. The story of Faust, a scholar who summons Mephistopheles for knowledge and pleasure, symbolizes the eternal struggle between curiosity and corruption. Similar tales exist in every culture, from African legends of witch doctors bargaining with forest spirits, to Islamic stories of men who enslaved jinn and were consumed by them in the end. In almost every myth, those who summoned demons were undone by their own desire. The rituals of darkness were never meant for mortals to master. 9. Modern legacy. The ritual lives on. Even today, the fascination continues. The grimoires of old have been digitized, translated, and even printed as occult books. Ritual circles appear in horror films and video games, often echoing real magical systems. Modern occultists, followers of paths like Thelema, chaos magic, and Luciferianism, reinterpret demon summoning as a form of psychological or symbolic magic. They argue that demons are not literal beings, but archetypes, manifestations of the human subconscious. Yet, for others, the veil between myth and reality remains thin. Reports of paranormal experiences, possession, and ritual magic still surface in corners of the modern world, proof that the ancient fascination with summoning the forbidden has not faded, only evolved. 10. The hidden message of the rituals. Across all civilizations and ages, the rituals of darkness share a single lesson: humanity's unending desire to know the unknown. Whether it was a Babylonian priest invoking the underworld, a Greek necromancer calling Hecate, or a medieval magician drawing the Circle of Solomon, every summoner sought the same thing: power, knowledge, or connection beyond the mortal world. Yet the myths warn us, not all doors are meant to be opened. The darkness may answer, but it never forgets. Throughout history, the summoning of demons has served as a mirror reflecting humanity's greatest temptation, the thirst for forbidden knowledge. From ancient rites etched in clay to medieval grimoires inked in secrecy, these rituals tell us that the line between enlightenment and damnation has always been perilously thin. The rituals of darkness remind us that power without understanding brings ruin, and that every name spoken in the dark may echo longer than we imagine. Whether myth or metaphor, these stories endure because they speak to something primal, our fear that the shadows may not just listen, but answer. The shadows have spoken, and the ancient rites have revealed their secrets. From forgotten temples to whispered spells of the Middle Ages, the myths of demon summoning remind us how far humanity has gone to grasp the unknown. But perhaps, some doors were never meant to be opened. If you enjoyed this descent into the dark side of myth, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Which ritual fascinated or terrified you most? Join us next time as we continue uncovering the mysteries hidden between myth and darkness. Until then, stay curious, and beware the shadows.